Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Schwartz, and welcome back to my little corner of YouTube. One of my main things that I've been getting really into doing lately is looking up and watching videos of art book collections that other artists here on YouTube have, as well as articles online, but nothing can really beat seeing the art book in action here on good old YouTube. I just love seeing what inspires particular people, what artists they'll gravitate to, what reasons they'll gravitate towards them. And it's also really interesting to see that there's a couple of artists, such as James John, who are very popular among a pretty solid amount of YouTubers, so that's really interesting to me. So what I thought I'd do today is I have about 9 or so books here that all in some way or another either inform my artistic inspirations or are just absolutely gorgeous items that I love to look at whenever I need that little bit of creative spark or rejuvenation, or I just want to have a pleasant little time looking at some gorgeous artwork. So I thought I'd kick things off with a couple of books here that aren't necessarily art books per se, but they're really fascinating looks at a particular artist's work that I greatly admire. The first thing that I have here is actually probably the most unusual item in my collection, and it is a Danger Girl sketchbook by Mr. J. Scott Campbell. So fun fact, I actually found this sketchbook of J. Scott Campbell's at my local coffee shop for about $6 a couple months ago. Considering how hard it is to find Campbell's stuff in book format for modest prices, that was a really good find. J. Scott Campbell definitely has a style that is all his own. You look at his designs and you know instantly, if you're a comic book nerd like me, you know instantly you can recognize his style. And it's really cool to see a book like this, to just see a behind the scenes look at how much time and effort it takes him to come up with the kind of artistic style that he's developed over the years. Like you can see here, he's thought out the anatomy for his female characters really, really well. It's not just a case of, oh, I'm not very good at drawing women, so I'm just going to draw them this way. No, he's worked really hard to develop his style into what it is today. The guy has accolades out like crazy, and in my opinion, they're all well-deserved. He's really, really good at drawing what he does, and a lot of people enjoy it, and I'm one of them. So I like to flip through the sketchbook every now and again. It's just really nice to see what sort of level of craft and talent J. Scott Campbell really has. The next two items are actually novels first, but they feature illustrations from an artist that I only started experiencing a couple of years ago, but whose work is utterly, utterly gorgeous. And his name is Jim Kay. Jim Kay is the man who provided the illustrations for the novel A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, inspired by Sibuhan Daoud, which is my favorite novel of all time. Alright, so I said this was my favorite book of all time, and I'm not kidding. I read this over the course of a single night, and by the end of it, I'll be honest here, I was gushing tears. I'm man enough to admit it. But I'm not going to go into the story. If you haven't experienced it yet, I don't want to spoil anything. But Jim Kay, as you can see here, he experimented wildly throughout this book with lots and lots of different ways to create different types of etchings and impressions and marks in the pen and ink work that he did. He used any type of media he could find. Even I think he used like twigs or leaves. I think he even used some insect legs to evoke this intense atmosphere. I mean, look back here. It took me a while to even see this the first time I read this book. But the atmosphere he's able to create with these gritty, like stylized settings, everything looks grimy, everything looks rusty, it looks lived in. There's nothing clean about the way this is done, which illustrates the ideas of the book absolutely perfectly. Jim Kay is one of the most experimental artists I've come across in recent years, and his illustrations make it so that if you can find a Monster Calls, but you can only find the non-illustrated version, I would almost recommend that you don't do it. Seek out the version with the illustrations by Jim Kay. They're going to make what is already a brilliant story even better. Jim Kay is also getting some really good accolades lately for providing artwork for brand new editions of Harry Potter, which are being printed in these massive coffee table sized editions. And this one here, the most recent one, Prisoner of Azkaban, not only is my favorite Harry Potter book, but is also my favorite version that he's released so far, and all three of them are spectacular. So one thing that I really appreciate about the way that Jim Kay went about illustrating this Harry Potter edition is that he didn't try to make the characters only look like how they have appeared in other artistic representations or in the movies. Instead, he took his own unique approach to showing us these destinations and these characters and these settings that we already know pretty much by heart. I mean, just look at that. It was actually thanks to the first volume, the Sorcerer's Stone that he did, that got me interested in doing watercolor in the first place, when I saw just what you could do with it, especially if you have as wildly of inventive of a mind as Jim Kay does. Even on the pages that don't have a lot of illustrations. I mean, look at his version of Severus Snape. That's definitely unique. This is another case where I know I've read these books so many times, I know them by heart. So seeing them presented in this massive format with these gorgeous original renditions of characters and of settings that I thought I already knew, seeing them in a new light like this is just an amazing experience by an amazing author and artist. And now we're going to actually get into the art books that are in my collection, exclusively just the art books. And one interesting thing that you'll notice right away is that there is a lot of video game art books in the collection I'll be showing you. I really like video game art books even more so than the art of movies, because a lot of the time a good video game art book will have copious amounts, gigantic amounts of concept art for the game, storyboards, concept designs, things that didn't make it into the game, rather than having just a whole ton of screen caps or screen grabs from the video game that it's based on. And it's within those storyboards and those concept art pieces that I always seem to find the most inspiration and the most value for what I'm buying with these art books. So let's get right into it. And we're going to get right into it with the art book from my favorite video game series of all time, the gorgeous Legend of Zelda Art and Artifacts. So I know that it might not be the most original thing in the world to say that my favorite video game series is Legend of Zelda, but sometimes something is popular for a reason. And this in particular is an absolutely gorgeous collection of a lot of artwork that, for a lot of people, they haven't seen this sort of artwork in years, decades even. They have every video game up until Breath of the Wild accounted for in here from the Legend of Zelda canon. Every single game is not neglected, which is really nice to see, because a lot of times video game series such as the Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages can be neglected in terms of getting art collected for them, because they're some of the more obscure Legend of Zelda games. But this includes all of them. It has sections for every single one, and this is just magnificent to look through. It's really fascinating to see the style similarities and differences that each of the video games can have. I mean, and to see something like this in printed format and just have it in my collection, oh, what a good experience. And this is over 400 pages of just pure art. This is one of the cases where, unfortunately, the artists are not credited on the pages, so that's a little unfortunate. But when you have so much gorgeous Legend of Zelda artwork at your disposal, I think it's ultimately okay. I'm alright with it, if it means that I get to have this on my shelf, knowing I can pull it out at any time and just look through all the amazing designs, the unique characters, unique creatures, weapons. Man, what a good experience it is to look through this book. Love it. And going from the relatively lightheartedness of Legend of Zelda, barring Twilight Princess, we're going to go to a game that is insanely dark, but is also just utterly gorgeous. Ironically, it's a game I haven't actually played myself, but the art book is so good that I just couldn't resist picking up The Art of Alice Madness Returns by American McGee. Alright, so I'm going to warn you now, this is a dark book. If you can't tell just from this cover, this is a gruesome series of video games. But then again, I've never played, but just look at this. Yep, I flipped right to that page, because of course I did. I don't regret it. Look at the gorgeous, twisted, dark, atmospheric artwork that this series has. It's utterly amazing. This is truly a case of presenting something that we have seen before. You know, we've seen dark, twisted versions of things before now, and this has a kind of Tim Burton feel to it. But what I like is that the creators took this idea, make a dark, twisted version of Alice in Wonderland, and they truly went all out. You can tell in this concept art. I don't know how much of this actually made its way into the game or not, but you can tell just how much passion and how much creativity was pouring out of the creators. And you can see here, they actually do credit all the people that made these particular pieces. So if I want to check out their work later, I have the ability to just quickly reference who made what. This is just raw imagination here, and it's absolutely stunning to behold. I'm not going to flip through every single page, because I definitely think that this and the rest of them I have here are books you need to check out for yourself, especially if you think this sort of art design is really great, because I most definitely do. Moving on from that, we're going to be taking a look at an art book that encompasses the artwork of an entire company. The Art of Blizzard Entertainment. Alright, so The Art of Blizzard. I found this at a Barnes & Noble that I was at a little over a year ago for $20. Ordinarily, I think this costs around, I would say 80 or 90. But I've seen it going for about 20 or so bucks on Amazon as well. World of Warcraft or Blizzard games in general are not things that I generally check out, just because that's not exactly the kind of games that I'm into. But what I am into is the art design that Blizzard has for their games. The medieval aesthetic, the ridiculously elaborate armor, the excellent beefy character designs, they're so unique. They definitely look like everything belongs in this world that they've created. Everything is like dialed up to 11 here. There's nothing subtle about a lot of the artwork that Blizzard has for their games. The men are bombastic and beefy, the women are svelte and sexy, the colors are vibrant. There's not a lot of grim and grittiness that you'll find to a lot of Blizzard's artwork, because it's all just in your face with high contrasting colors, excellent color theory working throughout. Look at the environments. Even all of these sigils, they all have a unique feel to them, and this is just amazing. My only complaint about this particular volume is some pages have a nice smooth feel to them. Some pages have a lot more textured or matte feel to them, so it feels a little weird to go through this book in terms of tactile feel. But the designs are amazing. They're so characterful, so unique, and everything in here, you look at it and you instantly know that's Blizzard. That's World of Warcraft, that's Diablo, that's StarCraft, and there's a couple of other games in here too as well. But for the most part, this is just excellent to look through if I'm wanting to try to design some new characters, especially some of the more twisted creature designs or some cool mecha designs for a lot of something like Warhammer 40k. But this is an amazing reference book. It's extremely thick, very well done. I love The Art of Blizzard. Down to the last three now. And what we have next is one of my absolute favorite art books that I own, that I also got for an insanely good value. I was at a convention, and I found this book for $10 that someone was selling. It was brand new. And that is Dragon Girl and Monkey King, The Art of Katsuya Terada. Alright, we're getting into the stuff that I'm most excited to talk about. Terada is an artist whose style I have not really ever seen before, and I doubt I ever will again. On the surface, the whole concept of, steampunk style mecha things, or ridiculously detailed things like that, you may say that you've seen that before, but the way that Terada illustrates his characters, there's almost an techno-organic vibe to it, a la something like H.R. Geiger, even with the Monkey King here. Just the way that he subtly applies the thickness of the lines, even with all this busyness going on, you don't have any problem telling what's going on, even with all these colors, with all these different line arts. His style is, I would call, techno-anime, but even that can't fully encapsulate what gorgeous artwork design he has. This is another artist who you look at it, you instantly know. You know who it is. I am constantly amazed when I look through this book, and I can just stay on particular pages for minutes on end, just standing in awe of what he can create. He can even take characters from established lore, like Assassin's Creed, and still do it in a way that is distinctly Terada. There's a reason why Terada is one of the most sought-after artists in Japan working today, and is my second favorite artist of all time. In fact, you can even follow him on Instagram, and he updates almost daily. That's another thing I admire. Terada is a tireless creative force. He's constantly creating. He's constantly making new things. And his work can be hard to come by here in the States. So if you can, I would highly recommend, for whatever price, grabbing yourself a copy of Dragon Girl and Monkey King. I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all. I certainly am not. It was actually at that very same convention that the last two books that I'm going to be showing you came from. Both of which I got for incredibly good deals, and this was a long time ago, but these last two are from the same artist, and both are my favorite things to flip through. All of the other books I have there are amazing, but these two, they're from my favorite artist. The man who is my favorite artist is Yoshitaka Amano, and we're going to first look at his book, The Collected Art of Vampire Hunter D. Oh, we're getting into the good stuff now, I tell you. For some reason, this slipcase for this particular collection apparently ups the value of this edition. Not really sure why, but whatever. So I'll talk about this more when we get into the final volume I'll be showing you, or volumes. But Amano is my favorite artist of all time, because it's another case where you look at the drawing and you have no trouble whatsoever knowing who it is. He has this, I wouldn't say grittiness, but he has this scratchy or sketchiness to the way he creates. He leaves a lot of big bold lines, big bold shapes of color or shadow, but somehow it never looks unfinished. Whatever he makes, even the cover, slipcover for this here, if I tried to do something like that, it would just look like a scribbled mess. But somehow he makes this look complete and intentional. Every line that he puts in his pieces looks 100% intentional and is not just a result of him overworking something. My only downside with this particular collection is that the spine is very, very stiff. So eventually I'm going to have to crack this spine in order to be able to see the artwork in its entirety. That's one reason why I always prefer art books to have hardcovers to them, just so they can lay flat. But that's a small price to pay to have all of this gorgeous, atmospheric Vampire Hunter D artwork at my disposal. Some of his artwork, I will admit, can be a little bit hard to distinguish at times, like this right here. But honestly, what that makes me do is just get more absorbed into it. I just want to keep looking at it to try to figure out what I'm looking at sometimes. The sketchiness that he has can be difficult to discern, but that just works more in his favor, in my opinion. Just because it makes you more interested and more invested in learning what he's trying to convey and what's going on in these gorgeous pen and ink pieces he has here. But this, in my opinion, is not the best example of his work. And we're going to get to that right now. Compared to the relatively small size of that Vampire Hunter D novel, it should put into perspective the final item that I'll be showing you. This is this is so big. Here, let me just take a look. Here's Vampire Hunter D, and here is the sky. Yoshitaka Amano's The Art of Final Fantasy. This is a silk print on this cover. Oh goodness, ladies and gentlemen, you have no idea how excited I am to show you this. I got this for $30 when it would originally cost around $90. This is something else I got from that one seller at the convention I was at about a couple of years ago. The presentation of this art book series is outstanding. This illustration is amazing. This is another thing I'm talking about. He has this way of drawing lips and eyes that are distinctly Yoshitaka Amano. Even for males, they have these dark lips to them. This is a style that I have seen emulated elsewhere, but never as fully gorgeous as it is here. So this particular edition comes in the form of 3 volumes, each of them covering different Final Fantasy game series. I'll just show you the first one. But this presentation is outstanding. And I've never really played a lot of the Final Fantasy games at all. But I wanted to after I saw this picture right here. This is the one that made me realize, A, how good watercolor can look, because that's a lot of what Amano uses, and he's another one of my main inspirations for wanting to get into watercolor. To see how good watercolor could look, and just the sheer style that Amano has. Again, it's entirely his own. There's just the way that he does these seemingly sketches. These look like they should be sketches. You can see the thick, almost scribbly lines, these seemingly incomplete watercolor applications, but somehow this always looks intentional where it was left off. These never look unfinished. That's a quality that I can't really say I've seen anywhere else. None of these pieces look like they still have work to be done. They look like they were stopped at the point where the artist decided to, rather than just being a rush job. I don't know how he does it, but the way that he creates form, the way he creates atmosphere, the character that he's able to get through his illustrations. Oh, if you can't tell, I'm truly enamored with this man's art style. And I have a couple more books of his work too. But I love looking through these artworks over and over and over again, trying to see if I can learn a little bit more about his process just through the insane amount of artwork that are contained within this set of absolutely gorgeous Final Fantasy art editions. So ladies and gentlemen, this is going to about do it. This is the majority of the most inspirational art books that I have in my collection. I have a couple more. If you're really curious, I can show you those in another video if that is the sort of thing that you would like to see. So I want to know as well, join me in this conversation. If you're the kind of person that collects art books, what are some of your main inspirations that you like to collect? Is it a particular style? Is it a particular series? Is it a particular artist? What sort of thing inspires you the most and makes you want to go out and pick up a printed edition, specifically printed stuff? I know a lot of us collect a lot of folders and of artwork online, but to me, nothing really beats being able to pick up a physical copy of these artworks and just being able to flip through them every now and again to find inspiration or just for fun. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mr. Schwartz. Thank you for checking out my latest video. Let me know in the comments down below what sort of thing inspires you the most, and I'll see you all in my next video, whenever that comes out. Have yourselves a good day.